Good morning. My name is Randy Riddle, and I serve as the first vice president of this association. I hope everyone enjoyed breakfast and getting to know some of the exhibitors and networked with co-elected officials and administrators from across the state. Our first session is the legislative panel, and it is a membership favorite and gives us an opportunity to learn about the issues affecting our borough communities. We appreciate the time these members took from their schedules to be here today, and I know that you will come with questions for them. I know we're all looking forward to hearing from our panelists and in having the opportunity to ask these questions, so I will turn the podium over to Ron Grutza, PSAB's Senior Director of Government Affairs, who will help moderate the discussion. Ron.
Thanks, Randy. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a great breakfast, got to mingle with some of your legislators, and of course that great keynote last night. That was really spectacular. So this is our legislative panel, and it's always a favorite of so many of the attendees, and of course my own as well, because this is really the area that we work in and day out, is up on the Hill in Harrisburg. Logan and I work on many different issues with the General Assembly. We work on, of course, the marching orders, as we say, the policy resolutions that the membership adopts every year here at the annual conference. And it's very important that we take those issues up to the Hill and let legislators know exactly what's important to our borough officials across the state. So with us this morning, we are very pleased to have all four chairs of the local government committee in both chambers. All four, this is kind of the workhorse for local government in the General Assembly. This is the committee that Logan and I work with the most in Harrisburg. And we work on, topics from general borough code issues to tax-exempt properties and stormwater facilities on state highways. Of course, that's more in the Transportation Committee, but municipalities planning code, really from soup to nuts. They are really working on some incredible issues that are going to impact municipalities throughout the state. So the format this morning, I will give some of the bios of our panelists here, and then we'll get into the presentation of each panelist. Then we'll open it up to, I think, a very important integral part of the session, and that's the Q&A, a chance for you to engage with the panelists, to ask some questions, and to get some really good feedback here from our legislative panel. Our first panelist today is Senator Dawn Keefer. Senator Keefer represents the 31st Senatorial District in York County. She is the new chair of the Senate Local Government Committee this session. Senator Keefer brings legislative experience to her new role, previously serving in the 92nd District in the State House for 4 terms, where she introduced legislation to permit local governments to freeze senior citizen property taxes at the base year amount. Senator Keefer also served as the inaugural chairwoman of the Pennsylvania State Freedom Caucus, advocating for limiting the scope and mandates of state government. Welcome, Senator Keefer. Our next panelist is Senator Patty Kim. Senator Kim, representing the 15th Senatorial District in Dauphin County, is the new chair of the Senate Local Government Committee for the Senate Democrats this session. Senator Kim brings local government experience in her new role, as she served on Harrisburg City Council for 6 years, including a term as the Vice President of Council. She then served 6 terms representing the 103rd Legislative District in the State House, where she championed legislation to raise the minimum wage and authorize counties that have recycling programs to collect a recycling and waste management fee of up to $4 per ton. Please welcome Senator Patty Kim. Next, we have Representative Bob Freeman. Representative Freeman is representing the 136th Legislative District in Northampton County. He is no stranger to the Local Government Committee. Chairman Freeman has been the chair of the Local Government Committee for the House Democratic Caucus for the last 12 years. During his legislative career, Representative Freeman was one of the leaders in revising the municipality's planning code in 2000 and authored the Elm Street program legislation that was designed to revitalize older residential neighborhoods and which was signed into law in February 2004. Please welcome Representative Bob Freeman. And next we have Representative Brett Miller. Representative Miller represents the 41st Legislative District in Lancaster County. He's the new chair of the Local Government Committee in the House for the House Republicans this session. He is not a stranger to the Local Government Committee, as he has served on the Local Government Committee since being elected in 2014. He has served as on the East Hempfield Township Supervisors for 9 years, with the last 4 as chairman of the board. He has authored legislation that would provide municipalities with the necessary tools to allow them to conduct government business in a timely fashion and not be encumbered by lengthy and expensive litigation to overcome a newspaper's failure to advertise public notices. Please welcome Representative Brett Miller. And I would like to note that all 4 chairs serve on the Pennsylvania Local Government Commission. And if you don't know, the Pennsylvania Local Government Commission is a bicameral, bipartisan legislative service agency that is very vital to local government in Pennsylvania. They helped to rewrite your borough code for you and reenact it in the consolidated statutes. So we really do thank you for your work on the Local Government Commission too. It's an invaluable resource. So at this time, we'll get into the panelists' presentations, and we'll start with Senator Kiefer.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for inviting me here today to talk to you. As the Senate Chair of the Local Government Committee, I have to say this is new territory for me personally, but I have been involved in a lot of local government issues throughout my tenure in the House, and I continue to champion some of those things in the Senate. I'm a big proponent of local government. I think the government closest to the people is the one they're most impacted by. Ironically, the one they're least engaged with sometimes as far as coming out to vote. But it is the one that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so I encourage a lot of people to get involved. There are various positions I think that they should be stepping up on Borough Council, any municipality, and serving, because we're always looking for good people to serve. To that extent, in the House and now in the Senate, I'm very conscious of passing things that put, I would say, unfunded mandates and more tasks on the municipalities who are already challenged to provide the services that they do on a day-to-day basis and then become data collection agencies for the Commonwealth. So I'm very conscious of that and trying to keep that in check as well and giving you the tools that you need to administer your municipalities, but at the same token, not trying to burden you with additional tasks that we seem to do a lot of in Harrisburg. I know one issue that I've been involved at the county level for York County and Cumberland is the stormwater management. And so we have been dealing with a lot of, in South Central Pennsylvania, we have a lot of Chesapeake Bay mandates, and we're trying to do a better job. And York and Lancaster seem to be the 2 worst counties, and we really get beat up a lot. And in York, we just said, hey, we want to do actual data collection, which we did. Over the past 4 years, and what we have found is we were actually 900% better than what the modeling had shown. And so I think this is one of the issues that's really crushing local municipalities as far as funds, keeping up with the projects to get the credits. And some of those goal lines continue to move. There's one currently, I believe, that's moving again. Just making sure, are we starting from the right goal line? Are we actually realizing and documenting the gains that we've actually met? So in York County, that's what I felt like. Our maps continued to appear to get worse and worse, but in actuality, they were getting better. Our waterways were getting better. And so it's making sure that we're being judicious with the finite resources that we have and helping you guys, hit those benchmarks. We want to be good stewards of our water, but we also can't bankrupt our citizens and our municipalities as well. So that's one area I have been really focused on. I continue to work on some of the taxation things, as Ron had spoken about. I do have had a bill that was saying that senior citizens could not be removed from their home for failure to pay property taxes. You could put a lien against that property, but you couldn't actually take their home. And that was just a Band-Aid solution, I know. I do have a property tax elimination bill as well, but something that would help. It's a huge issue in York and Cumberland counties for me, is property taxes. That the rate in which that increases far exceeds the rate of inflation for a lot of our homeowners, and you should not be on the hook for losing your home after you have paid property taxes all your lives. So that was just one way to approach that issue. And I'll continue to work on the property tax. I have a Senate bill that will be coming out, Senate Bill 31, which is a property tax elimination bill. So I look forward to hearing from you today and what your concerns and your priorities are as an association. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we'll have Senator Kim give a presentation.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Again, my name is Patty Kim, first-time state senator. So the first 90 days, I decided to really get to know the district. I've been living in Dauphin County for the last 25 years, but really wanted to do a deep dive. I have 8 wonderful boroughs in Senate District 15, and met with some of the elected officials, the borough managers, to just learn and listen. And after doing that, we invited all the municipalities to a breakfast to talk over the governor's budget, get feedback, and talk about their needs. We did a quick survey for anyone who wanted to respond back with the municipalities. And for Senate District 15, some of the results that we got were the biggest concerns were fire apparatus and facilities, their parks, stormwater and sanitary sewer, and the roads. I think a lot of you could probably relate to those issues, and so some of those are some of my priorities. When I visited the boroughs, and I'm preaching to the choir, boroughs have a really special sense of community. They're always the smallest, but you always feel that the volunteerism is high. People care about their neighborhoods and they're involved. And so I want to make sure that we preserve those boroughs and that sense of, again, community and home for folks. And from the borough managers to the electeds, you guys have so many other things to do. You guys have real jobs, but you do this because you care about your community. And I want to make sure that we, again, preserve that. So my goal as local government chair and state senator for Senate District 15 is, because the parks are special, because economic development is special or important, that we make sure that the state provides as much as we can so that you keep your property taxes lower or status quo. The parks are important. I want to tout, I don't know if anyone here is from High Spire and one of my boroughs, but they have a community band where you have the oldest in their 80s and you have one of the band players in elementary school. Like, you can't get that in big cities. And so we make sure that their parks are safe, they're updated and whatnot. And so communicating with your state senator and state representative, I think, is really important to make sure that we have open lines of communication. We're not mind readers. We can't get to your districts or your areas as much as we'd like, but just to have open communication. And there's also one suggestion that I gave to the township supervisors is that, allow us to hang out at your administration building. We have pop-up mobile office sites, and to invite us there, again, it'll give us an excuse just to talk, communicate, and see what the needs are. Another thing about that I'm interested is because boroughs have such a limited tax base, prices are going up, needs are going up, that it's tough to keep up. When I was on Harrisburg City Council, I had the unfortunate timing of us looking straight into the eye of bankruptcy. And that was really hard, that we are so limited in what we can do in terms of revenue, that I think our municipalities need more options when it comes to raising revenue versus, just raising property taxes. So one borough that I am a big fan of is Paxton. They have realized their situation, not, kidding themselves that things will get better and better every year. So they have shared services with the neighboring township. They've been doing their police for at least 10 years now. They have saved money and improved their services, better coverage. Save money and have better coverage. And then in 2022, I believe they shared services with their fire department. So is that where we need to go? I don't know. It's up to all the boroughs and townships, neighboring townships, but they're doing it right. It's working for them. Let's see if it can work in other places. I had right when I started state rep back in 2013, one of my boroughs had a terrible drinking water problem. There was bacteria growing, the infrastructure was not updated, so they were not hitting the marks that DEP was asking for. And so what does a state rep do? What does a state senator do? We can walk in and see what we can do with helping with Penvest loans, either low interest or eventually a grant to help with our infrastructure, having a relationship. And so we after a couple of years, and I think it was $2.5 million later, we were able to get the drinking water to the level that was suitable for our residents. Really important. Drinking water is pretty basic in terms of rights. Clean drinking water, just an example of how you can work with your electeds in the state level. Looking forward, looking out, there's word that we need to get a budget done. That's not the word. We need to get a budget done by June 30th. But we don't know what is going on in Washington, D.C., and what Congress, mainly the U.S. Senate, will be doing with a bill, the big, beautiful bill going on right now. So we may have to just pass, and Representative Freeman or Representative Miller can, if it's the same word is going around in the House, is that, we would just pass a 6-month budget and then see what happens in Congress. I'm looking out because what they decide to do will trickle down to the state level and I think down to the local property tax issues, whether it be Medicaid, SNAP benefits, the elimination of Title I education funding, which is education for some of the impoverished areas, or Head Start. And so if those are taken away, we don't know, the negotiations are still happening in DC, we have to pick up what is left. And so the state will be stretched, and then I don't want to see us having to raise school property taxes because, we don't have Head Start anymore or pre-K. So some things that I'm looking at and making sure that we protect our communities and that it's not too much of a burden for you guys as we are looking at an uncertain future. I have a bill that has nothing to do with boroughs. It may have something to do with residents, but I like to share this just to show where I'm at in my head. And I know that your boroughs, you have a lot of senior citizens. I have a grand families assistance bill. We know that we have a lot of grandparents who are the primary caregivers of their grandchildren for whatever reason. And I think that's happening a lot more. And so we are looking at a program where we would allow the AAAs to have funding to help with these parents, grandparents who have immediate needs for their grandchildren. And I just use that as an example because I've had grandparents come to my office sharing their needs, their struggles, and their challenges, and that we need to be responsive to them. You guys are on the ground, you're listening to people during public comment period, but we need to not just sit and forget, but to lean in and try to do something to help improve the lives of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our next presentation will be Bob Freeman, Chairman of the House Local Government Committee.
Thank you, Ron, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I always look forward to the annual Boroughs Conference, hearing your concerns and learning what are the priorities in your communities. I have had the great fortune to serve as the House Democratic Chairman of the Local Government Committee for many years now, as Ron referenced, and to focus in on a lot of issues that primarily do affect boroughs and cities, our older communities that have a greater need in some respects for support and assistance. I have 5 boroughs in my district. They're all great boroughs, and I enjoy working with the officials in those boroughs on a regular basis. And I do have some local government experience. I served as chairman of Easton's Home Rule Charter Study Commission back in 2006. We drafted the Home Rule Charter, which passed in 2006 and became the basic frame of government for the city of Easton. I think it's worked very well since that time as well. I know there are a number of priorities that you have an interest in. I'm looking forward to your questions. As far as last session, I was pleased that we were able to raise the allowable maximum ceiling for salaries for borough officials. That had not been done in a long time. You put in long hours. It's a tough job, and you deserve to have a decent level of pay. So I'm glad we were able to address that last session. We also passed my bill to allow for communities that were in the Main Street program to be able to request from DCED the ability to extend their participation for an additional 5 years. Currently, the current limit is 5 years to be in the program, and then you drop out of it for a period of time. But it became apparent that there were a lot of Main Street communities that weren't quite able to finish their plan objectives for their Main Street community. And giving them an additional 5 years if DCED feels it's warranted is an important way to make sure they can get their plans to the finish line. It also would allow for the continued paying of the Main Street manager, a critical position in the Main Street program, the real linchpin of that program to work with local officials and residents and to be able to make sure the plan that's devised for Main Street revitalization can move forward. We already had ability for a 5-year extension in my Elm Street legislation, which I authored to help residential communities. So it was good to see that pass to give Main Street the same opportunity. I'm working on a couple of pieces of legislation I think might be of interest to you. One that I know has been a priority of the Boroughs Association is to allow smaller communities to be able to create land banks. Currently, the law stipulates that you have to have 10,000 population or more to be able to establish a land bank. And I think that's an unnecessary and artificial requirement. Many of our smaller communities need the benefits of a land bank. A good land bank can help to revitalize a community in so many ways, taking care of properties that have become abandoned or dilapidated, or where they ended up not being able to maintain their taxes, so they went up for sheriff's sale. All of those properties need to be revitalized. And it's even more critical in a smaller community like a small borough, because once you have a number of properties starting to deteriorate, not being well maintained, it can spread like a cancer through a community, affecting all other property values and the overall feel and look of a community. So my legislation, which did pass committee, did pass the House, and is pending in the Senate, so I'll be talking to Patty and Dawn at some point, was to drop the 10,000 ceiling, make it apply to any municipality that wants to establish a land bank in order to try and revitalize these properties and get them up and running again. Another piece of legislation I know I've spoken to this group in the past and I have a real passion for is my legislation, House Bill 985, to create a tax-exempt property municipal assistance fund to help those communities that have a particularly high percentage of tax-exempt properties within their municipal boundaries. It's extraordinary how many communities actually have a considerable number of properties that are tax-exempt, and that affects the tax base of a community. It's difficult to raise the revenue that's necessary to maintain municipal services, to make sure that the fiscal health of the community is stable. Under my legislation, any community that had a sizable percentage of their total assessed value as tax exempt would be able to draw on the municipal assistance fund. The monies from that would come from the 18% liquor and wine tax that's levied on all wine and alcohol in Pennsylvania. That generates about $460 million a year. And so to drive that out would help many, many communities that are facing the problem of high tax exempt properties. Communities that are most likely to be beneficiaries and most in need are a county seat, a university or college town, a major hospital facility that is a tax-exempt facility, or are in Act 47 because of their current fiscal distress. It's interesting to note, too, when you look at those communities that have been in Act 47 or are in them now, the percentage of tax-exempt property is amongst the highest. Anywhere from 25% of the total assessed value of the property of an Act 47 community to as high as 60% is tax exempt. And it's tough to generate the revenue you need for services when that big a portion of your tax base is off limits when it comes to the real estate tax. So I think that would go a long way to stabilizing a lot of communities, and we'd save some money too. If you don't have to go into Act 47, that means the state doesn't have to pay for that programming as well. But I do think it would stabilize a lot of communities and address an issue that's been in need of addressing for many, many years. So I'm hoping we can move my legislation in the next couple of weeks, report it from committee, and hopefully see some action on the floor of the House in this session. And finally, I'm working on a bill to create a specific plan provision in the MPC that would allow that to be utilized for residential plans as well. The current language in the municipalities planning code for specific plans limits it to everything but residential. So you could have commercial or industrial properties that can be specific plan generated. But the specific plan really affords municipalities the opportunity to kind of frame how you want an area of your community to develop. And with the need we see today for affordable housing, applying that to residential development as well as the existing permitted uses, I think is a pretty important goal. The specific plan is a way to work quickly with developers, make sure they adhere to the plans and vision that you have for that particular part of your community that you want the specific plan to apply to. It also utilizes some very important tools in making sure that development occurs the way you want it to. And this legislation would require the use of sketch plans. Currently, they're voluntary, but if you're going to use a specific plan, the developer has to develop a sketch plan to make sure that they're going in the right direction in complying with how you want that specific plan to look. So that could be a tool in trying to expand affordable housing and to make sure you as local officials have a little more control over the patterns of development that occur in your community. So those are my priorities. I look forward to your questions today and hope we have a good exchange of Q&A.
Thank you, Chairman Freeman. Chairman Miller, next.
Okay, well, thank you, and good morning, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here. I am in my first term as chairman, and we have three of us up here, and Bob, of course, has been here for a long time. He's our senior member. But we're grateful to serve in this capacity, and I'm privileged to represent two boroughs, Mountville and Columbia, in Lancaster County. And they're great folks there, as are each of you in your respective communities. I want to start just by saying this. I want to thank you for, first, this opportunity to be here. Secondly, for the work that you do. As a township supervisor for 9 years in East Hempfield Township, I have a sense of what the work is that you all do. And I want to say personally thank you. I know what it's like. I know the hours you put in. I know the issues that you face. Sometimes they're mundane and not so controversial. Other times, the opposite. And you all have faced it, and there's some complicated issues out there. So I want to thank you for the work that you do. It's very, very important. And I believe, too, that the government that is closest to the people is the best. You all live in the communities, you know what's happening in your communities, and you hear from your neighbors at the grocery store or wherever you are, and you get to relate to them and get the finer details of what's happening. So then you go to work to address those issues. So for my part, I want to say thank you. I want to talk just a little bit too about how I approach my role as state representative, but more than that, just in life in general. And I really don't see a whole lot of difference between my role when I was a township supervisor and how I see myself now. And that is to approach this job as a servant, because ultimately it's not about me, it's about the people and about our communities, about making them better. And so for me, it's about service, and I believe that's your heart as well. That's why you're here. That's why you do what you do. So this is about service and servanthood. Secondly, it's about humility. I know a couple things, as do each of you, but we all recognize we don't know it all, and we need to learn and we need to hear. So we need to be humble, and we need to learn, and we need to listen. Prior to being elected, my full-time work prior to being elected as state representative was I was a middle school guidance counselor. And I joke that if 26 years working with middle schoolers has prepared me for the General Assembly like nothing else. So, but in that role as a counselor, of course, we have complications with middle schoolers, as you all know and can attest to, I'm sure. But it's key to listen carefully and to learn, and then to develop a plan and implement it to the best you can to bring about good results. So that's how a little bit about me, how I approach my job. And now as chairman, as the Republican chairman in the local government, I'm privileged to serve with Bob here. And by the way, we did coordinate our outfits here. So yeah, I said to Bob on the way in, I said, if I say something crazy, blame this guy because he looks just like me, and he's going to do the same for me. But we get along very well. We try to work on the issues there that we all face. That's our goal. I want to mention just a couple things just about the one bill that was referenced at the highlight that Ron referenced. We all know that as townships or boroughs, you can't do a single thing without advertising. Right? And in Lancaster County here a couple years ago, we had a situation where one of my municipalities had gone ahead and advertised. They had a land use issue, and they had a bonding issue. And basically, there was a clock on them. And bottom line is the local paper got hacked, and they couldn't advertise, which we were then, this municipality was facing a deemed approval, which would have been a serious problem. And they would have had a bonding issue that had a clock on it, which was a serious problem. Thankfully, both of those issues worked out without having to go to costly litigation. But from that, I introduced a bill that would say if a municipality does their due diligence and goes through the steps to properly advertise and puts that information on their website, if a newspaper, for whatever reason, fails to advertise, that municipality could proceed forward with that business. Seeing that as a rare incident and hopefully, not a problem, but we got that bill passed several times now. It's passed out of the committee and is pending on the House floor. I know the advertising issue is a big issue that we all face in terms of getting the word out, getting our people aware, the costs related to that as well. I know Bob has a bill as well, but that's one of the bills in particular that impacts all of us because we can't do a single thing unless we advertise. So we understand that. So that just being one of the issues, the host of the issues that were outlined prior to my comments, I'm just prepared to do what I can to listen and to try to serve you the best I can to develop legislation that will help you be able to serve the people that you work for. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Thank you very much for that informative presentations. A lot of issues there, and of course I know that all of you have some questions for our panelists. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the floor for questions at this moment. We do have microphones in the aisles. If you have a question, come up to the microphone. I want you to state your name, your borough, if you want to throw in your county, great, and fire away to our panelists, and anyone who wants to jump in, feel free to answer. We'll start with Wayne here.
Mic check. All right. Thank you all for the hard work that you do. It is difficult. And this may be an unfair question, so let me know if that is the case. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania received a lot of money from the Biden administration. Where's the money? How was it spent? Where was it dedicated?
I think you're referring mostly to the ARP money. That was the post-pandemic funding that came about. And that was driven, a lot of it was driven into local communities and have used it in appropriate ways. I know personally in the case of Easton, they used it for a lot of programming that was pretty helpful to the community. And I'm sure many of you did receive ARP money in terms of some of those federal dollars. That, however, has ended, so it's a loss of revenue that was quite helpful.
So I'll add on to that. We have asked for some of those reports too, because I agree, I'm a big transparency and accountability person. But as the chairman said, the bulk of those dollars were ARPA dollars, and those were driven out either directly to the counties, the municipality, depending on the sizes. Under a certain threshold, it would have come to the state and then been pushed out. But collectively, in the totality, I think you're right. We need to see what did that look like? Where did we receive all those funds? I can tell you a lot of the funds were used for programs that, as the chairman said, are expiring. So now they're looking to the state and the federal government to backfill some of those, which is unfortunate because we didn't have the capacity prior to that to keep some of those programs going. So to use one-time funds for that has put some entities in sticky situations. So we're going to have to reprioritize. Do we want the new program, or is there something else that we can get rid of, or merge programs? I mean, those will be the local decisions. But in the totality, I agree. Let's get that report so you can see, who all got the monies, how much was it, and how were they spent. And I believe there are some still sitting in accounts that have not been spent.
Okay, next question, down front here.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Aronson. I am a member of the Ephrata Borough Council in Lancaster County. Thank you so much for being here this morning, and thank you for your service. I am here to speak to the issue regarding stormwater management. Senator Kiefer, you mentioned it specifically. My borough has done a good job informing its residents. We've done a good job in our plan to roll out the fee. Many people aren't happy, of course, but it's necessary to be in compliance with the regulations. I'm very interested, Senator Kiefer, in your comment about your private study not meshing with what's been reported. Interesting. What I'd like to ask all of you to do on behalf of boroughs and municipalities that are involved in this, are involving their residents in funding this matter of stormwater management, is that you urge the regulatory agencies to move forward responsibly and with due haste to make sure that their regulations are in place, because that would give some relief to those of us in boroughs. I'm not sure that the regulatory agencies are as committed to the individuals in the residents, to the people part of it, as the four of you indicated. That's my request for you. Thank you very much.
So I will add on to that. So in a lot of the regulatory reform stuff that I have been working on, that's how I see our regulators. They're supposed to be supportive, not punitive. And it's supposed to be helping facilitate whatever that role is to get that law going. But as legislators as well, we need to do our due diligence and write very clear laws that are comprehensive, that we're not leaving so much up for interpretation by the regulators. But some of it's being pushed down from the federal level. And as I said before, the numbers not matching up, right? It's because it's modeling. It's based on modeling, and it's antiquated modeling that's there. So we were asking for years, could you please update those models? Can we get live testing? And it wasn't done, so we helped the county secure the funds so that we could do actual testing on that. So that might be something that you want to go to your county and look into.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
If I could add too, being from Lancaster County, this a lot is driven from the feds down to the states. And in Lancaster County, you'll be interested to know personally, the amount that was required for us to do in terms of rollback of some of the cleaning of the water would have cost about $400 million, which would have moved the needle 1% of what was required for Lancaster County alone. So there is great need for reasonableness, flexibility to allow municipalities to do what they need to do to clean the water. We all want clean water, but you can't bankrupt a municipality. You need to have flexibility. You need to work with the local people. And we as a General Assembly, I believe we're prepared to do what we can to address that, to give you the tools you need so that you're able to do your job without bankrupting your borough.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just note too real quickly, we did have legislation in our committee which we reported. Representative Struzzi, House Bill 990, which would allow boroughs to be able to charge stormwater fees without having to create a stormwater authority to save a step and make it more flexible for you. That authority was granted to second-class townships, I think, a number of sessions ago. But I'm hoping we can get that bill across the finish line so you have that flexibility as well. And as was mentioned by my colleagues, a lot of this is driven by the federal government, and DEP is just sort of trying to enforce it. But they do need to be pragmatic in how they go about it. Sometimes, too, we miss the chance to use some old tried and true ways of dealing with stormwater and stormwater runoff. A lot of it is a result of poorly planned development, which usually ends up coming into the borough, even though the development's outside the borough. But a lot of times, too, we go for the expensive engineered approach to try and deal with it. And we had a project that I was involved with in my hometown of Easton, where stormwater was occurring constantly in a neighborhood. And it was coming in from the neighboring township mostly. But the problem was such that we investigated the site, and there was a spring also, which added to the water flow. But neighbors were having water come cascading down during a major storm event and just ruining their driveways and everything else, their basements. So I led an effort to get funding from DCNR to create a wetland. Wetlands are great absorption areas for stormwater. That's how nature used to deal with it. And we've lost sight of how important that can be. And we restored the wetland, and that has ceased to have a stormwater problem in that neighborhood as a result. So part of it, I think, is being innovative and sometimes reaching to the past for cures that are less expensive.
Thank you for your question, Nancy. We'll go to the next question. Heather in the back.
Hi, Heather Zink from Columbia Borough. Hi, Representative Miller.
Hello, Heather.
He's been good to us. He's been great. But anyway, while we're talking about the regulations, in addition to being on my borough council, I also sit on the Lancaster County Planning Commission. And we recently had a presentation. Someone mentioned affordable housing. Currently, the average cost, the presentation from, I believe it was the EDC or it was the Redevelopment Authority, currently the average cost of new construction in Lancaster County is $600,000. That sounds like it's high, but when you consider the amount of that cost for regulation is $250,000 of that $600,000 just in meeting regulations, state and federal regulations. So when we talk about affordable housing, it needs to come down. We need to do something because it's not going to be affordable as long as we have so many regulations and unfunded mandates to comply with. My borough is a relatively poor borough. Just to give you an idea, 75% of my borough is CDBG eligible. There is very little that is not. In fact, although it did just shrink, it went from 80 to 75%. We're blessed to have a land bank in Lancaster County, and my borough was the first one to work extensively with them. We had a few properties that had devastating fire, and the land bank acquired them. and they have been working to redevelop those. They're in a CDBG eligible community. Those properties are also in our historic district. The land bank is now to the point that they are proposing 4 new townhomes on there. The total cost for that project is $2 million, which means each residence would be a $500,000 townhome in a poor community. Now, how much of that is due to regulation? We need help with that kind of stuff. If you expect us to provide affordable housing, we need help doing it. Thank you.
If anyone wants to respond.
Just to say, you're right. I mean, affordable housing is a critical issue. It's a crisis issue in a lot of communities, and we have to do a better job of providing for it. And part of that is through the regulatory process. Also, we need to make sure that we give a wide range of housing options to make them affordable as well. And in many respects, our boroughs and cities have that mix of housing that can be more affordable. Everything from a townhome to a duplex to a single home to apartment buildings. They usually can accommodate a greater range of housing type, which gets into the affordability issue. I have a piece of legislation I introduced last session that I will be reintroducing soon to create a lease to purchase option legislation where a family that would rent would work out through a PHFA, a rent-to-own process, where a certain portion of their monthly rent would be put in an escrow account. And when it gets to the point where that can be used for closing costs to purchase the property and all the down payment that goes with it, they could then access that escrowed account. And it's a great way to try and get housing more affordable for those who can barely afford rental properties. But once they're in it, if they can set aside that amount to get to the point of purchasing, it gives them the opportunity to purchase a home at a more affordable price through mortgage financing that's more reasonable. And that in turn helps to stabilize neighborhoods as well. I'm convinced that the more you have home ownership, the more you're going to create a stable environment. Nothing wrong with apartment living, obviously, but property ownership does usually come with people caring a little more about how the neighborhood looks, how stable it is, because their life is invested in that real estate. Also, being to go from a lease to purchase process, for a lot of working class families, it gives them the chance to have equity, which they would never realize otherwise. And equity is a key component for them to meet their needs as their kids get older, need to go to school, or any other need that might be required of the property they own to be fixed up. So I think that's one option that can help. But your point was well taken. We do need to look at the regulatory costs that are involved.
And let me add on to that, because you're exactly right, because we've had a couple developments in my district where it is supposedly affordable housing, but then the units come out, and even one-bedroom apartment units are coming out to $1,800 a month. I don't know who that's affordable for when you're talking about if that's supposed to be affordable housing. In my area, it's not. And so there's some things we absolutely have to do at the regulatory level, the permitting and fees. All those, the length of time it's taking to get permits, and when you have to go through multiple layers of government to do that, when one's doing the same as the next. So if you have the feds coming in or the counties coming in, the municipalities coming in, we got to make sure that that's streamlined. But one of them I have is the MPDES permit. Those are roughly about $100,000 to get one of those permits, and that's Pennsylvania right now. We say anything 1 acre or greater has to get an MPDES permit. But a lot of many states have it's 5 acres. So why can't we just do 5 acres? That would save a ton of money and help take off from that front end, so that when you get to the back end of the final development, you're not at $1,800 a unit or $500,000 for a townhouse. That is exorbitant, and they're not going to pay that. So then they're going to be looking for it to be subsidized on the back end. So we have to balance this out, and you're absolutely right. It's the permitting, the regulation on it, and all of the fees on it are crushing development.
If I could add to just a couple things. I, in fact, have a bill with Dave Zimmerman. We've introduced that several times. I got to pass the House to change it from the 1 acre, from the 5 acres to the 1, or yeah, to allow for some flexibility there to help decrease the cost. Of course, what we're dealing with here, as you all know, we're trying to competing interests. We want to lower the cost, make things flexible, make things more affordable, but then we have people on the other side who will say, well, it's not going to be good for the environment. So we need these regulations, or we'll say it's not good for safety. So then you have these competing forces working against each other and trying to find policy, and we are where we are. And so even to make steps to change some of these regulations, which I'm in favor of, to give more flexibility, help lower the cost, speed up the process, and so forth, we end up running into some battles up there related to this. And so that's part of it. But we have regulations that come down from the feds, of course the state, and then even locally, which would be under your control to help develop policies and ordinances that could make things quicker. And so we're all trying to work together on this, but it's very difficult. So we've introduced legislation, that what I reference here, and haven't been able to get that across the finish line. But that, as well as some of the others, we are working on and will continue to do so.
If I could just add, I think some of the underlying problems that we have with government, which I know we have a lot of, but we have a lot of talented people stuck in offices and patting themselves on their backs saying this is a great idea. But if they would just go out of the office and see how it is in a practical sense, they would realize that it's not a very good idea. And so with you guys being on the ground, we need to have this constant communication and feedback as to how it actually affects regular people. You know, it's just frustrating that legislation sometimes can go really fast or at the speed of molasses, but when it is going quickly, we don't have that time to get that feedback as quickly as we'd like before we make a decision. We can get stakeholder stances, which is great. Ron, just to let you guys know, does an amazing job. I swear, I think he lives in the Capitol because I see him all the time. He might be squatting under one of the staircases. I don't know, but he's always there, and I just want to give you public credit for that, Ron.
Thank you.
But yes, with Ron, as well as you guys talking to your electeds, you really, we knew that it was a problem, but to hear it up front is very valuable, and we need to get to work on that.
Thank you for that question, Heather. Next question in the back here.
Beverly Hill, Spring Grove Borough, York County. I, too, want to say thank you for joining us here today. One of the things that surprised me most when I first became mayor was how much good does go on in government, and you are a perfect example of that. We also have a hardworking state representative and senator for our area who is very active. So we appreciate all of you. I appreciated especially what Senator Kiefer had shared about MS4 also. One thing I had heard, and I wanted to find out if there's any truth to it, is that townships can get exemptions from MS4 projects where we can't. And also, because it's frustrating, you know, if they can get off and we can't. I mean, it seems a lot of times boroughs are asked to do more with less than what the townships are, and that's frustrating. And also, the other thing I heard was that if we get to a point where we don't have any MS4 projects that we can do, I was informed that we would have to help somebody else out in another community to do an MS4 project, and I was wondering if either of those statements are true.
So in York County specifically, we have a consortium, and a municipality can opt to participate in it if they want to or not. It's usually cheaper to participate in the consortium, and that's decided based upon population, impervious surface. So for example, I think Carroll Township, which is a larger township in the northern end of the county, they're around $200,000 a year to participate in that consortium, and then that meets their MS4 requirements. But then you have other municipalities, townships that are very rural. They don't have the population or the impervious surface or development, and so they can apply for a waiver to opt out because they don't have that threshold to meet, so there are some that do that. That's how they're able to technically opt out, and that's reassessed every year. They have to, submit all of their information just in case, if there is something that's developed, if their population does change, then that changes. But that consortium is, again, it's optional whether you participate in it or not. So, for example, while Carroll Township might pay that much money, or the borough may pay that much money, they might not necessarily have a project in their municipality. It allows the county to say, where are we going to get the biggest bang for our buck as far as credits go? Right? We can do this project over here and mitigate this many pounds of nitrates, which helps us meet those Chesapeake Bay requirements that we're required to at York County. And that's how they do it, which is, initially when I heard it, I didn't like this whole, you had to pay and you don't get projects. But as I look at it, I have a portion of South Central Cumberland, and each one of those municipalities is struggling independently to do this and levying storm fees and then trying to do projects and that may or may not have an impact or minuscule impact for the amount of money that they're spending. It's really, really frustrating. And then one last piece to this, which we have been fighting and we are continuing to fight with, is making sure that we're getting credit for all of the things that we're doing. So there are a lot of best practices that we are doing in York and Cumberland counties, and we're not getting credit for it at the federal level. So we're still challenging to get those credits adopted and accepted at the federal level. So we get that credit for what we're actually doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Next, down here.
Bill McAllister, Honesdale Borough. I'm a borough president, vice president, and I appreciate your service for our communities. My concern is stormwater. Honesdale happens to be in the bottom of the bowl. The local cliff is called Irving Cliff, and it's 900 feet it's above sea level. The community's at 0 ground level. So everything comes down to us, and unfortunately we're only 4.2 square miles of community, and everybody around us is above us. And we can't seem to coordinate exactly how we want to approach this. At the same time, we've been thinking about creating the stormwater fee circumstance, and 2 years ago when I was at the conference, the litigation was going on whether to determine that it is a fee or whether to determine that it's a tax. I still don't know what the result was in relation to that. So we did investigate establishing an authority. We would like to do that. We've hired an engineer. We know how we would allocate the fees if we were able to create them, but we're still trying to decide how to approach this issue. I appreciate your responses.
I would say look at your county first. What responsibilities is your county willing to pick up, or they will work with your municipalities? I would say having versus each one of those authorities that you would have for every municipality versus doing it at the county level to see, hey, can we get a better bang for a buck and get better actual results when you're looking at how are we mitigating the nitrates and sulfates. And now it's my understanding that they're changing it to total volume. So I just think from a more of a collective regional approach allows you to be more judicious with the resources that you have.
We've been fortunate in having 2 dams that prevent the water from coming down, the Jadwin Dam and the Prompton Dam. So the Prompton Dam takes care of the Lackawaxen River, and the Jadwin Dam takes care of the Dyeberry Creek. So when they meet right in the middle of town, we can watch the water rise. Right.
Well, and then, listen, as somebody, on that Maryland line with York County and Lancaster County, my colleague here, Brett Miller, we can appreciate, hey, being at the bottom and receiving all of the stormwater and all of the sediment and everything else that you have to mitigate, right? Because I say that all the time. We're the 2 biggest polluters, they say, of the Chesapeake Bay. I said, well, we're also the 2 on the line, right? The last 2 counties, and I'm not a scientist, but I do know the basic laws of gravity. So, how are we looking at what we're mitigating from north to south?
At the same time, raising the revenue, whether it's a fee or a tax, if we get the impervious service situation resolved and decide that our local hospital, which has a huge parking lot and huge impervious surfaces,
yes,
who does not make any contribution relative to property taxes, is now going to be assessed a fee probably in the neighborhood of $5,000 or $10,000, and try to distribute that fee across the residents and others and say, you know, a home is going to cover a certain amount of the ground, and if we said, okay, we're going to charge $10 a year to residents, but those that have the commercial services that really create part of the problem, we need to have an assessment that's functional. So that's kind of where we're coming from, but we haven't been able to initiate anything because we still haven't resolved whether we should have the authority or whether we should figure out another way to adjust it or to identify it as a fee and administer it internally versus authority-wise. And we do have a Central Wayne Regional Sewer Authority that takes care of things. And of course, they come up and dig up all the streets, and of course, we have to figure out how to fix it. So that's a different issue.
Thanks for your question, Bill.
Okay.
You definitely have done your homework. I can tell you've been on top of this. It's amazing. Yeah, it's an ongoing battle over whether it's classified as a tax or a fee. Court case in Westchester, in Chester County, where they tried to get Westchester University to pay the fee, the stormwater fee. They objected. They said it was a tax. They took it to court. I don't think that's been resolved yet.
It's
That's
No,
still in
it's
court.
still hanging out there
Okay,
like
yeah.
a lot of the litigation.
It's still in the
Yeah.
Supreme Court. We're waiting for the decision.
But I mean, it really is a fee. It's not a tax. It's a fee because of what the problem creates.
Well, you and I agree, but
Yeah.
we haven't got any confirmation.
We should be on the Supreme Court. That's but no, I think that's one of the problems you face. And again, my tax-exempt property municipal assistance fund bill is trying to get at some of the issues that arise from a tax-exempt property within your community. Don't get me wrong. A hospital or a county courthouse or a major university are important regional assets and they're major employers, but they don't pay real estate tax. And so we have to find a way, hopefully in my legislation, to drive some money into those communities that have a high percentage of tax-exempt properties, because it's just undercutting their ability to function properly. When you have upwards of 71% of the assessed value in your community is tax-exempt, as East Stroudsburg has because of the university, it's very tough to provide services properly, and you need to be compensated for that.
Thank you for your response.
Thanks, Bill. Our next question, Jeff, right down here in front.
This is a great segue, so thank you very much for coming. On the subject of revenue, I wear a couple of different hats. I'm the borough manager in Chambersburg. I also work for the ICA in Harrisburg. Thank you to Senator Kim for all your support. One of the things that we discovered in improving the fiscal standing of the city of Harrisburg was that they received some what we call extraordinary taxing authority, and that was because they were a very distressed community. But it raises the question, and we know last year that the Pennsylvania Economy League did a report called It's Not 1965 Anymore, which talked about revenue diversification for boroughs such as the ones in this room. And I think, Representative Freeman, you sort of nailed it. There is an overdependence on real estate tax to support all of these communities, and no one in this room wants to or likes to raise real estate taxes. It is not the best form of taxation, but we don't have many tools in the toolbox. So one of the things we discovered in fixing the city of Harrisburg was that a reliance on other taxes, specifically the local services tax and the earned income tax, can provide a more diversified tax base and more opportunities for communities to improve themselves without overloading their citizens on real estate tax, and especially in communities that have very high tax-exempt properties levels. So really the question for all of you is, what do you think about a future where we can diversify the revenue sources for boroughs so they're not just raising real estate taxes every single year and trying to find other ways to fund local government that maybe are a little bit more imaginative than what we have before us currently? Thank you.
I think that's long overdue. I think there's a need to really look at how we provide tax revenue at the local level. And like you said, people don't like to raise the property tax if they can help it. It can be self-defeating in a lot of ways. One thing that can be done now until the legislature grapples with it and comes up with a plan that's good. And I remember supporting the initial local tax reform proposal under Governor Casey, which I thought was a very good, extensive, broad-based plan to reform local property taxes and the local taxing system. Unfortunately, it was complicated and went down to defeat in a referendum because of it. But one thing that communities should look at is, again, what we did in Easton by going home rule. Home rule does give you some flexibility in that regard. We were worried about increasing property taxes in Easton. Easton, which is doing extremely well right now. I mean, it's really experiencing a renaissance in terms of its restaurant scene, its farmers market. It's vibrant. We've had a lot of adaptive reuse of buildings. New apartment buildings are being built, so they're in a good mode right now. But prior to that, they were heading towards Act 47, and going home rule stopped that from happening because we were able to provide greater flexibility in the earned income tax. And to raise that somewhat to compensate for not having to go back and forth to the property tax. So home rule is a good tool available to you now. But it's a process that really takes some educating of the public in terms of what you're trying to achieve. If you go to the public with just saying we want to raise your earned income tax, your chances of success are going to be pretty small. But if you take it as an opportunity, which we did in Easton, to look at the entire structure of government, and say, how can we make this more professional? How can we save some costs? How can we maybe expand the size of council? Easton had a 5-person city council that was elected at large. A number of neighborhoods didn't have representation on council. So we made half the seats district seats and the other half at large. And that guarantees every neighborhood representation. So you really have to approach it from how can we make government more efficient? How can we make it more professional? How can we save some money? How can we also make it more democratic? While you're also trying to find flexibility in enhancing revenue.
I just want to respond just because you brought up Harrisburg, and thank you for your service, whether it be borough manager, which is a difficult job, or being on the ICA. And I completely agree with you. We need more tools in the toolkit. You know, there's just not enough. When I was on Harrisburg City Council, looking at all the terrible options in order for us to get back on our feet. You know, we were thinking of a drink tax, you know, leasing our parking garages, which has been a disaster, and it's so difficult for us to bring in the revenue. And I think the main issue is that there's a distrust with the legislature, that you guys will go crazy and raise all these taxes out the wazoo, but you guys are paying that same tax. You guys were duly elected. You can make the decision for yourselves. And so that's what's stopping it, but I think it's also hurting us. And like you said with the city of Harrisburg, the increase of LST and PIT has kept us afloat. There's no doubt about it, but we could only do that through Act 47, and we had to ask for an exemption. And I think that should be for all of us. And just a side note, DCD is asking for $10 million because they know that the ARPA funds are dwindling, and that municipalities may go into Act 47 because it's that dire, and they want to have that money to help support the boroughs. So we see kind of a tsunami hitting, but you guys need more tools. Right. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our last question. We're running out of time, and it's right back here in the center aisle.
Hello. Hi, I'm Zach Bloom, Houtsdale Borough, Clearfield County. You really piqued my interest, Representative Freeman, on that land bank bill. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that. Would that bill allow for kind of a joint land bank with smaller municipalities together? Clearfield, I think, is a little unique, and I don't know in other counties, but we have a lot of little tiny boroughs in the southern part of the county. I mean, we almost border a borough. There's like 10 feet of township between us and our next borough. So it would be very beneficial if we could. So would your bill allow for that? And then along with that question, is there any grant funding to get that up and running, that small local land bank?
You would be allowed to collaborate with other communities to come together in a land bank, and sometimes that's very advantageous because of what you're describing as far as the size and scope. There are no fundings in the specific bill, but in many respects, I suppose they operate similar to a redevelopment authority in that regard. And again, that's one of the primary reasons we want to get rid of that. You have to have 10,000 population. We did away with that for redevelopment authorities a number of years ago. So smaller communities are now using that as a good tool as well. But yeah, land banks, the potential is just, it's amazing when you're dealing with deteriorated and abandoned properties. They usually get first priority at a share of sale as to acquiring the property. And the role of the land bank is to acquire dilapidated or abandoned properties, renovate them, maintain them, and then get them into a redeveloped use so that it adds, again, to the tax base of the community, but also deals with addressing blight, which is so critical. If blight begins to spread in a community, it really can spread like a cancer and just undermine the entire community. I should note, too, there's nothing in the land bank legislation that allows the exercising of eminent domain. That's not a feature. So a lot of times people are afraid of that being utilized, and it's not a provision. But you can use the land bank structure to acquire these properties that need to be fixed and set up and put back into a positive use again. So yeah, good luck. Hopefully we'll get the bill passed in the Senate, and that would give a lot of smaller communities a lot more options to use land banks.
And what bill is that?
It is House Bill 369.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Passed the House, it's pending in the Senate.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up our legislative panel. Great discussion this morning, a lot of issues. I'm sure that I think we all can agree stormwater is a major concern in our communities. Please keep on that dialogue between your state representative, state senator, congressman, U.S. senator. It's really important that they hear your concerns and what's important in your community. So I'd like to thank our panelists today and their leadership for local government in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Senator Kiefer, Senator Kim, Representative Freeman, and Representative Miller. Thank you so much for joining us today.